If you've been anywhere near the Coronation Street fandom over the past few months, you already know something big was coming. A body. A funeral. A flash forward that teased 5 different suspects, 5 different victims, and one bone-chilling scream that echoed out over Weatherfield. Well, that mystery is finally over, and the answer to who killed Theo Silverton is not the twist anyone was expecting. Stick around, because this reveal doesn't just close a murder case. It rewrites the entire emotional core of one of the most talked-about storylines in Corrie history. So, let's rewind for a second, because if you haven't been glued to every episode, you need the full picture to understand just how enormous this moment actually is. Theo Silverton arrived on the cobbles as Todd Grimshaw's love interest, and on the surface, it looked like a sweet, slow-burn romance. A self-employed scaffolder, a former Christian who'd endured conversion therapy, a man who seemed to be carrying real pain from his past. But underneath that charm was something far darker. As the relationship developed, Theo revealed himself to be controlling, manipulative, and increasingly violent, isolating Todd from the people who loved him and subjecting him to a sustained campaign of coercive control and abuse. It became one of Coronation Street's most harrowing storylines in years, a soap willing to sit in the deeply uncomfortable reality of domestic abuse within a same-sex relationship, and to do it without flinching. Then came Corriedale. In a landmark crossover event that saw Coronation Street collide with Emmerdale for the very first time, Todd, Theo, and Todd's ex, Vicar Billy Mayhew, ended up together on a minibus that crashed on a remote road. Billy already knew Theo's secret. He'd seen through the nice guy act. And in the chaos of that crash, Theo made a choice that would define everything that came after. He left Billy to die, silencing the one person who could expose him for good. From that point on, Theo wasn't just an abuser. He was a killer hiding in plain sight, delivering Billy's eulogy at his funeral while secretly consumed by guilt, using that same guilt as another tool to manipulate Todd, and clawing his way toward getting away with it completely. Todd, meanwhile, found himself unable to leave, weighed down by grief, and convinced that Billy's death was somehow his fault for confiding in him that night. Theo, for his part, was ravaged by his own guilt over what he'd done, but justified his actions to himself as necessary to hold on to Todd, believing in his own warped way that he genuinely loved him. Around this same period, the show made a decision that sent the fandom into overdrive. In a special flash-forward episode, Corrie confirmed that someone in Weatherfield was going to die, and it wasn't going to happen for months. The episode jumped between present day and a mysterious future scene, where Betsy Swain was shown being interviewed by police after stumbling across a body near the venue of Carla Connor and Lisa Swain's wedding. 5 characters were named as potential victims: Carl Webster, Jody Ramsey, Maggie Driscoll, Megan Walsh, and Theo Silverton himself. Betsy explained she'd been heading into town after the wedding when she came across the victim, and the episode closed with a bruised Carl, a frantic Jody, a menacing-looking Maggie, a bloodied Megan, and a distinctly secretive Theo, before a scream tore through the air, marking the end of one character's life. Naturally, fans went into full detective mode. Forums lit up with theories. Polls circulated. And when ITV's This Morning got involved, hosting a viewer poll to try and settle the debate once and for all, the results were telling. Viewers overwhelmingly named Theo as the most likely person to die, seeing it as the show's way of finally giving him the comeuppance he'd been dodging for months. After everything he'd done, to Todd, to Billy, to an entire community that had no idea what was happening behind closed doors, audiences wanted justice, and they wanted it delivered in the most dramatic way possible. Adding fuel to the fire, it was later confirmed that the actor playing Theo was on a finite contract and always knew his storyline had a fixed endpoint, with a dramatic exit already being planned. That confirmation alone was enough to convince most fans they'd cracked the case. Theo was leaving. The show had all but pointed a flashing arrow at him in the flash-forward, and the only real question left was how. Well, now we know. And it's Sarah Platt. Yes, you heard that right. Not Carl. Not Megan. Not some shadowy new arrival plotting revenge in the background. It was Sarah, one of the very people who had spent months trying to protect Todd, who dug through Theo's been looking for evidence, who confronted his ex-wife to find out what he was really capable of, who stood alongside George and Gary as the net of suspicion slowly closed in around him. Theo was found dead outside the flat he shared with Todd, and it was ultimately revealed that Sarah struck him with a scaffolding pole after he lashed out with cruel remarks aimed at her and at the memory of Billy, the man Theo had already killed once before, on that road out of Corriedale. It's a genuinely staggering twist, and not just because of who's holding the weapon. Think about the timeline here. Todd had already found the courage to report Theo to the police after a horrifying escape attempt, breaking free while Theo showered and getting to the authorities covered in blood to finally tell the truth. The two had even gone ahead with a wedding, married for barely 2 weeks before Theo beat Todd senseless again, prompting Todd to go to the police once more. Theo, by every indication, knew his time on the cobbles was running out. He kept stalking Todd even after that. And it was in that final, twisted confrontation, with Theo apparently taunting Sarah about Billy's death, that Sarah finally snapped. What makes this so seismic for the show is the sheer weight of what it does to Sarah's character. This isn't a stranger delivering justice from a distance. This is a woman who has spent this entire storyline as one of Todd's fiercest protectors, someone who put herself in genuine danger investigating Theo, someone who believed, like so many of Todd's loved ones, that the only way to save him was to expose the man hurting him. And now she's not just implicated in his death, she's the one who caused it. The moral lines here are murky in exactly the way great soap storytelling thrives on. Theo was a killer. He was an abuser. He'd made isolating Todd from anyone who might see through him his entire mission. But Sarah didn't act in self-defense during one of Theo's outbursts against Todd. She acted after he provoked her, after he weaponized Billy's death as a final act of cruelty, and that distinction matters enormously for where this story goes next. Fan reaction since the news broke has been exactly what you'd expect from a fandom that lives and breathes this stuff. Social media has been split between viewers cheering that Theo finally got what was coming to him, and viewers stunned that it's Sarah, of all people, now facing the fallout. Longtime Corrie watchers have been quick to point out that this isn't the first time Sarah has been dragged into a life-altering crisis through no fault of her own, and there's already speculation swirling about whether she'll come clean, whether Todd will ever find out the truth about who really killed the man who tormented him, and whether this becomes the beginning of an entirely new murder cover-up storyline that could run well into the back half of the year. Soap press and entertainment outlets have been framing this as one of the boldest choices the show has made in its recent history, precisely because it refuses to hand viewers a clean, satisfying kill. Instead, it hands them a moral minefield. So what does this actually mean going forward? For Todd, it's almost impossible to overstate the emotional aftermath. He's a man who has just escaped months of abuse, who buried his ex-boyfriend after Theo left him to die, who found the courage to go to the police not once but twice, and who now has to process the death of his husband without knowing, at least not yet, that one of his closest friends is responsible. There's enormous dramatic potential in watching Todd grieve a man he should hate, wrestle with the tangled trauma of loving someone who hurt him so badly, and eventually confront the truth about Sarah, whenever that truth finally surfaces. For Sarah, this is potentially the start of one of the biggest storylines of her time on the cobbles. Does she confess? Does someone else find out first? Does the guilt eat away at her the same way Theo's own guilt over Billy consumed him for months? There's a real symmetry there that the show seems to be leaning into quite deliberately, and it wouldn't be surprising to see Sarah's arc echo some of the same beats Theo went through. The secret apology no one was supposed to hear, the mounting paranoia, the fear of a slammed door or a chance encounter unraveling everything. And then there's the bigger question hanging over the whole street. If Theo really was the victim revealed in that flash forward, what happens to the other 4 names in the frame, Carl, Jody, Maggie, and Megan? Were they simply red herrings designed to keep fans guessing? Or does this mean the show still has more fallout coming for those characters regardless of who ended up dead? Producers have been famously cagey about spoiling exactly how the dominoes fall, and if the past few months of misdirection are anything to go by, there's likely still more turbulence ahead for all of them. What's clear is that Coronation Street has pulled off exactly the kind of twist it does best, building a mystery for months, letting fans convince themselves they'd worked it all out, and then delivering an answer that technically confirms the popular theory about the victim while completely upending expectations about the killer. Theo Silverton, the man who left Billy Mayhew to die and terrorized Todd Grimshaw for the better part of a year, is gone. But the person responsible isn't a stranger, isn't a villain, and isn't even someone acting purely in the heat of self-defense. It's Sarah Platt, one of Todd's own protectors, forced into an act that's going to haunt Weatherfield for a long time to come. This story is far from over. If anything, it feels like the true beginning of a much longer, messier chapter, one that's going to test friendships, expose secrets, and put Sarah in the kind of impossible position soap fans absolutely love to watch unfold. So that's where things stand with Coronation Street's biggest mystery of the year, finally solved. Let us know down in the comments what you think happens next. Do you think Sarah gets away with it? Should Todd ever find out the truth? And who do you think cracks first? If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more Coronation Street news, spoilers, and everything happening on the cobbles. We'll see you in the next one.